All right, friends. Well, it's Curtis Robinson back with Conway Toe-to-Toe and Toe-to-Toe Firearms and Training. We are a self-defense training company, and I'm going to talk specifically about that today. Before we get started, I would love it if you guys make note to subscribe to our channel. It really does help. So if you like what I am talking about today, and you take some notes on these things, and maybe it helps you just make some decisions in the future, then that is valuable. And if you like how I approach things, then again, subscribing and clicking that little bell will help you get more notifications when I put things up. So made a little sticky note for myself here so I can, try to stay on track. And I kind of wanted you guys to think a little bit about why we teach what we teach. Don't forget, I teach firearms. That's separate. We're going to talk about the more martial arts feel, the more long-term training. The first thing I want to get into really is kickboxing. Why kickboxing? Well, let me just explain that I've got extensive background in karate, traditional karate, Kempo, and I've also done, I touched on a little bit of actual, Taekwondo. I haven't done a lot of that, but I've done a lot of boxing and kickboxing. So when you look at kind of what works best, I love traditional martial arts, and for anybody to say there's no value in traditional martial arts, I think you're wrong. I love traditional martial arts, but here's the thing, here's the grind. This is the part that's so difficult. What can I do with a human being in approximately 1 to 2 hours each day? And it's a decision. You just have to kind of weigh things. I remember in our traditional karate program, we did a lot of forms. So again, it's solo training. Once you learn the form, you're practicing these things and so forth. You're going through heian or pinan katas, or you're doing more traditional forms like sepai, unsu, these kinds of traditional karate katas. By the way, the Kempo systems have their own variants of these things as well. They're really interesting when you're looking at a way to preserve the tradition. It's important to preserve the tradition. Now, those forms will help you to be sharper, but there's other ways to get sharp that's a more direct path. So here's kind of the way that I look at it. If you want to be a traditional martial artist, you can't beat karate or Kempo or even Taekwondo, good systems. But if you want to really focus on self-defense, where are you spending your time? So when I'm running a class, let's say it's a 1-hour class, the first 15 minutes I'm warming up. And I'm pretty sure that every good karate, Taekwondo, kickboxing, Muay Thai, boxing program, there's a warm-up. We should have joint rotations, we should have flexibility, we should have some sort of cardiovascular warm-up, jumping jacks, push-ups, sit-ups, something of that nature. 15 minutes of that. Right? Then we move to the next block. Well, what are you doing for the next block? Traditional systems, a lot of times, will go right into forms. You're going to be doing your next belt rank kata or form probably for 15 or 20 minutes, maybe even longer. Then, from that, they teach a 15-minute lesson. And then the last 15 minutes, you get to fight. So, I do things differently. And I do things differently for a very strong and important purpose. I think it's better for us to spend that 15 minutes of time doing our warm-up. We should do that particularly if it's focused on something that's applicable. So for instance, I like jumping jacks, but I don't do jumping jacks all the time. We can do a kicking drill or a boxing drill, or we can even jump rope, or we can do other things, we can do box jumps, whatever it is that your heart desires. But how much of that is really directly applicable? So I could do jumping jacks, which doesn't help me with self-defense. It helps me with cardiorespiratory fitness. So kind of keep that in mind. It's better to go ahead and do that joint rotation stretching piece and then hit the heavy bag, hit the mitts. You're using your cardiorespiratory or your jumping jack time, your push-up time, and so forth in direct application of the system with boxing and kickboxing. That's one of the things I like. So I'm leveraging an additional 15 minutes of something that's directly applicable rather than doing exclusively, jumping jacks or exclusively, 15 minutes of some sort of good calisthenics. By the way, I love calisthenics and I do that. I just do a very small amount of that. So that gives me more time before I teach the lesson to do some other drills. Now, why do drill work? Let's say, for example, that you got 20 kids or 20 adults that come into your class, and you notice that there's a couple of them that are smoking hot and everybody else is either brand new or they need some work on the basics, on the fundamentals. Where are you going to spend your time? Generally speaking, in karate, everybody goes and does their form by rank. That makes sense. So the white belts do the next form for their test, and the yellow belts do the next form, and blue belts and green belts and so on, all the way up to black belt. You guys are doing your form. So it's specific, and it works well for traditional systems. But what I'm doing is I'm going to make sure that we're working on the fundamentals of self-defense during that time. And again, whether you start with heavy bag and then go into focus mitts, or whether you're doing some combo training, you're working on what goes well with the jab and the cross. The round kick goes well with the jab and the cross. What goes really well with the side kick, the spin back kick goes well with that. And you're working on the fundamentals of making the movement. And then we get into the lesson. So I've watched and I've assessed, and now we're working specifically on what is important. So whether you're in the ring for boxing or kickboxing, or whether you are just doing something more self-defense oriented, just open on the mat with a partner drills, you're really still working in some function where you're actually making the same motion to punch that you would in self-defense, rather than a spear hand, rather than a knife hand, rather than, some other kind of, V strike to the throat and so forth that you see a lot in the forms. And again, I'm not dogging the forms. I'm just saying that my approach is now different because I'm focused on the self-defense aspect. If I were a traditional karate guy, what I would be telling you is I have shortened the amount of time to work on the kata, and I have expanded the time working on the bunkai, in other words, the application. All right, so kind of keep that in mind. I still spend a good portion of the time teaching a lesson, and then we always fight at the end. When I say we fight, 15 minutes in the ring with an opponent is just huge. If you're not fighting every single day, then you're getting a technical martial art, not an application function. Okay, does that make sense? So don't get me wrong. I see these guys that they're on the tournament circuit. They're doing tournaments like left and right. Their forms are immaculate. Particularly these. I saw some kids from Japan. They couldn't have been but about 6 years old, and they were sharp. They would look great, and they're good at that. I'm focusing more on, can you hit, can you punch, can you dodge, can you move with precision and balance, and can you do those things with power? Okay, that's my focus is a little different. So as I kind of think about self-defense, I want people really, really punching, really, really kicking, really, really taking hits for toughening and mental, you got to understand mentally what you can take. Some people call that body hardening. In the old days in Japanese, the idea of knuckle training or tameshiwara, this is kind of a body hardening drill. The Kyokushin guys still do this. They spend a lot of time just hitting each other. They hit each other in the chest and in the stomach, and they kick each other in the legs to toughen the body. So I try to focus on that. For self-defense, I focus on that with the kickboxing side. That means I've had to trim out a lot of the stuff. I don't do any formal weapons anymore. No tonfa, no bow, no nunchaku, no sai, no sword. I'm not doing any of that stuff. I did that stuff as a kid. I am focused mostly on, direct application. You're not going to carry a sword, so probably the sword work is awesome for preserving a tradition. If you're not carrying a sword for self-defense, then probably, let's work on how fast can you draw your firearm, for example, by comparison. Let's talk about Jiu-Jitsu for a second. Jiu-Jitsu is, in my opinion, the opposite, the antithesis of kickboxing. Where in kickboxing, you want to stay away at range 2 and range 3, right? Range 3 is all I can do is kick. Range 2 is I can kick and punch. Rarely does a kickboxer want to be in range 1 unless you intend to clinch and throw the elbow. Don't get me wrong, elbows and knees are extremely important for kickboxers, but we want to stay away if we can. If we can stay away and just side kick and front kick people, or throw the round kick, kick to the legs, and these types of things. That's where kickboxing is really, really great. There is an entire block where I teach nothing but close range, make the clinch, throw the elbow, throw the knee. I got headbutts and some other cool, dirty fighting, but I also talk about scooping people up and throwing them on the ground. And kickboxing throws are legit. But jiu-jitsu is very different. The first thing you really want to do in jiu-jitsu is not get punched and kicked so you can close. You want to close that distance. So let's say, for example, that range 3 is here, range 2 is here, and range 1 is here. This is where the jiu-jitsu person lives. Jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, judo, sambo, wrestling. What's the first thing that we do? We cover high, we move in, and we make a grip. Once we make a grip, then we can start doing something. And again, if you're a wrestler, you make the collar tie, or you shoot in and you take a leg. If you are a jiu-jitsu person, generally speaking, you're looking for wrist control, or again, maybe you tie up. You could shoot in. If it's gi versus no gi, there might be some different things, but jiu-jitsu with the uniform and judo are pretty similar. You want to get a grip on the uniform, you want to take them down. And I teach that. I teach a way that we have to make the grip, we have to break balance, and we have to get the throw and the takedown to get the dominant position. Once in the dominant position, then you want to entangle. You want to isolate. You want to make sure they can't move well. That's pinning, right? Pinning is important in wrestling. Pinning is important in judo. Jiu-jitsu, they don't pin as much anymore. They mostly kind of hang out in the... if they can get in the mount or the side control position, they'll fight from there. But there's a lot of fighting in jiu-jitsu that's just guard work. If they can take the back, they'll do that. But there's a lot of jiu-jitsu that's just guard work. So I teach jiu-jitsu because if you end up getting punched and you fall to the ground, you need to be able to fight from the ground. No one does it better than jiu-jitsu, in my opinion. If someone grabs you and throws you to the ground, you want to be able to fight from the ground. In the event that you trip and you fall and then someone gets on top of you, you want to be able to fight from the ground. So the reason I'm teaching jiu-jitsu rather than judo, jiu-jitsu rather than wrestling, is because we focus on self-defense. So in jiu-jitsu, if you're going to follow a bunch of rules, it's kind of sport BJJ. It's not the same as what jiu-jitsu used to be. Remember in the first UFC, Gracie got in there and he made a kick to the leg, then he made a single leg or a double leg, took the guy down, made the arm bar, and if he couldn't get to the arm bar, he hit him, he threw elbows, he threw knees, he got to a dominant position, then he sunk in a rear naked choke. That was his system. It was pretty easy. Royce Gracie is known for that. I've trained with Royce Gracie, so when I say that works in self-defense, I'm talking about being able to strike to open up the choke, or to strike to get the arm bar, to loosen people up. Once you get in an entanglement and you've got somebody pinned, then you can start working for those arm locks and chokes without striking. So I teach that. And I like jiu-jitsu because it includes arm locks of all sorts, leg locks of all sorts, chokes of all sorts, but also neck cranks and other spinal manipulations that wrestling and judo just don't use. Judo does not like leg locks. You're not going to find a judo player that teaches leg locks or does them in competition. They just don't do it. Sambo is different. Sambo is the closest thing to what I consider traditional jiu-jitsu that's not jiu-jitsu. Sambo's got punching and kicking. It's got wrestling. I mean, it's a mixed martial art. It's an MMA event. So I do like Sambo for that fact. So again, we're really looking for a way to first make grip, second break balance, third make the throw, fourth take the top position or fight to the top to dominate, then entangle. Once you entangle, then you can submit. And in the event that something happens anywhere along the line, any of these steps, you should be able to strike in some way to get an advantage. So I teach that. So when you've got the kickboxing piece on the one side, you got the jiu-jitsu piece on the other side, that blends nicely into what we call as MMA. It's mixed martial arts. Why is it mixed martial arts? Well, you're mixing two things that aren't really the same. I would say that probably if you had trained in boxing and you trained in karate, and now you punch like a boxer and you kick like a karate person, that's mixed martial arts. You've mixed two things, but they're still pretty similar. Whether you're making a you're flicking out a jab as they do in boxing, or you're sticking the hand straight out as you do in a lunge punch for karate. It's reasonably close. So I find jiu-jitsu to be very different from kickboxing, and thus they go well together to form a true self-defense art, a mixed martial art. Now, the third thing I teach is Kali Escrima. So when I say Kali or Escrima, I find them to be synonymous. It's okay if you call it stick fighting. Filipino martial arts, or FMA, that's common now. Kali, Escrima, Arne, all these are different words that basically fall into how do you defend yourself with a stick, a knife, or a sword, or some combination of the three, potentially even an axe, right, or a hatchet. All these things can translate into other things. I got a hammer, I don't have, a knife, you can still use it in Filipino martial arts. Here's the thing with Filipino martial arts that I find to be most fascinating. It really isn't so much about trying to bludgeon your opponent the way that we do in kickboxing. I love punching people and I love kicking people, but the stick is so fast that defanging the snake, you hit somebody in the back of the hand with a stick and they can't punch. They can't hold a weapon with that hand. I would say the same thing for a knife. You take a knife, the person's punching and kicking at you, and you just move the knife back and forth in front of them. They ultimately will cut themselves to ribbons on your knife attacking you. It's extremely effective for self-defense. I could go more into detail why they talk about defanging the snake, which is attacking the hands or the arms, right? Attacking the legs, whatever the closest thing to you is what we're going to strike with the stick or with the knife, okay? The Japanese do this in kendo and kenjutsu. They yell kote when they hit the wrist. This is a wrist strike with the bamboo sword for kendo. And they do that because if you were to destroy the hand, they can't hold the sword. And ultimately that would give a samurai or a person with a sword a great advantage. So that, I think, is universal. Filipino martial arts, Japanese martial arts, Chinese martial arts, European martial arts, whatever it is, if you destroy the way they're holding their weapon, that's pretty stinking effective. Then you go beyond that and you start thinking about defensive blade, which could be a non-lethal, the person could bleed to death, but it's a non-lethal strike. The person has an opportunity to, use the uninjured arm to apply direct pressure to the injured arm. Now both hands are out of the fight. The fight could potentially be over. You wouldn't have to kill the person. That's good self-defense. You could also make strikes to vital areas to include anywhere along the throat, anywhere in the chest cavity, the groin area, along any of the major arteries, the brachial artery, the carotid, the jugular, also into the aorta, down into the femoral. When you're kind of looking at these things, it is extremely easy to end a fight with a knife. Not quite as easy with a stick, but it's easier with a stick than it is punching and kicking, in my opinion. So that's the real value of the Filipino martial arts, or Kali and Escrima. So I teach that. And the neat thing is that everything you do with the stick patterns, right? You can do without a weapon. You can do it with a knife, and so on and so forth. So it really helps your ability to lay hands on people when you're used to punching, and then you end up grabbing. That grapple or the intercepting of that hand in some way leads to some sort of entanglement. And an entanglement leads to, in most cases, a throw and a takedown. So I love that about Filipino martial arts. They've got wrist locks, they've got shoulder locks, they've got other joint locks, they've got throws and takedowns like you wouldn't believe. They've got really neat footwork, and again, it all is very fast. And because it's so fast, you have to have patterns and sequences that make sense. It does take some time. So let me rewind a little bit and go back to the first thing I said about what am I going to do with my hour. So I've got a group that's just kickboxing 2 times a week, every Monday and Thursday. So adults are at 6 p.m. We've got a junior class at 5 p.m. and then we got a 4, 5, and 6-year-old at 4:15. So we've got 3 different kickboxing classes going on every Monday and every Thursday. And we really focus on the kickboxing. Sometimes we'll bleed over a little bit. Again, they're still clinching and throwing, so that looks more Jiu-Jitsu-y or Jiu-Jitsu-like, more Filipino-ish, with throws and locks and takedowns. But there is that in kickboxing, so I really do focus on that. Then I've got 2 days a week when I'm teaching Jiu-Jitsu. So every Tuesday and Friday, again, 6 o'clock for the adults, 5 o'clock for the juniors, and then we've got the kids class, the 4, 5, and 6-year-olds are at 4:15. So we're doing Jiu-Jitsu on Tuesdays and Fridays, and I really focus on that. I do show some dirty fighting, how to strike to the eyes and the groin. I do go through, some things like, you're trying to get the arm bar and you're in a self-defense scenario, you can strike to the groin. Can't do that in a tournament. You can do that for self-defense. You stick your thumb in their eye. Promise you that they will go from a locked position where they're not letting you get the arm bar. You stick your thumb in their eye. They will let go of that and try to get your hand off their face. You can arm bar them then. These are some of the dirty things that I teach that are really applicable for self-defense. So when do I teach the stick and knife class? Well, there is a very, very small following, in my opinion, for stick and knife. And I've talked about it a lot and I've marketed it. So I'm only really doing that once on Wednesdays. So I'm doing that on Wednesdays only, and only for adults. I'm not really teaching stick and knife, which is a little more, it can tend to be a little more dark. You're talking about sticking a knife in another human being's body, not something I want to teach a 4-year-old. So I'm teaching that to adults only. I probably would accept some mature teens in the 16-year-old category, but I'm not teaching it to little kids. So again, kind of think about that. We also have 2 hours where we're teaching mixed martial arts. So we've got Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 to 8 o'clock that I'm teaching the mixed martial arts program. Why would I do that? Well, we already got the Jiu-Jitsu and the kickboxing. Now we can blend those things specifically for you put on gloves, you put in your mouthpiece, you put on your shins, and you're punching and kicking, and sooner or later you lock. Then somebody gets taken to the ground, and there's an opportunity for an arm lock or a choke, or there's an opportunity for a leg lock or some other, ground and pound work. That's where we exercise that. All of these things fit nicely, and they interlink. There's some overlap in each one, and that's really important, I think, for self-defense. I don't talk a lot about using the knife in the MMA class. It still is mostly unarmed. If I break out the knife or I talk about the stick just for a few moments, it's mostly to remind people that self-defense includes whatever you can get your hand on. A brick or a rock would work well in a self-defense situation, and it's usually right there. It's readily available. So let's talk about the other piece. Why else would you come and join my class, or why else would you go to any kickboxing, jiu-jitsu program, or a Filipino martial arts program, karate, kempo, taekwondo, judo, sambo, wrestling, whatever it is that you've chosen? Why go? It's fun, very entertaining. You're learning, you're growing, but there's a great physical fitness aspect, friends. This thing is one of the greatest things about martial arts is that it prepares you for combat physically, not just how to punch, not just how to kick, but martial artists are, generally speaking, more flexible and faster than non-martial artists, generally speaking. They are also typically stronger with muscular strength and endurance. Now, you could say just strength training, like lifting weights, super good, makes you stronger. I like that. You can buff up, you can get bigger. But resistance training is really what I'm talking about. So, as somebody clinches with you in a kickboxing match and lays their weight on you, you're holding their weight up while you're punching. Very difficult thing to do. Hard to develop power from the clinch, but we have to fight from there. Then making the throw. People don't just let you throw them and you have to work. You're pulling against them, you're pushing against them, you're extending those arms and legs out in a way that really develops this muscular strength and endurance rather than just strength training alone. Don't get me wrong. I lift weights every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I got a push day, a pull day, and a leg day. I also run. I do a whole bunch of other stuff on my own because I want my cardio to be super good. But while I'm training, I am really, really exercising. So when you kind of think about, well, you know what I could do? I could join a P90X class. Yes, you could. And they have a great program. You will get hot. You will get sweaty. Your endurance will get better. You will get stronger. You will get faster, more flexible. It's great. There's just not a self-defense aspect to the P90X. So that's it's always my advantage. I'm looking at something self-defense, but this side benefit of the fitness is great. So then we look at some of the other advantages. Our endurance is super important. It's really funny to me, and when I say funny, I literally am smiling and often laughing when a young kid, an 18 to 25-year-old person comes in and they look healthy. They look like they're an athlete. They look like they've got some coordination. And I look at them like, whoa, okay, I got to be on my A game today. We just got an athlete. This guy's, I don't know, on the football team. Maybe he's on the basketball team. And I'm thinking, he's probably got some pretty good endurance. Again, if you're a football player, what are you doing? You make a mistake, you run laps, right? What are you doing on the basketball team? You're running up and down the court. You're on the soccer team. What are you doing all day? You're running back and forth. You're kicking that stinking ball. You're on the track team. What are you doing? You're running laps. You're sprinting. You're doing some sort of interval training, or you're long distance running. You should have great endurance. And guess what happens when I put boxing gloves on them, give them a mouthpiece? They last about 5 seconds, and then they start getting tired because they hold their breath. The nerves, the anxiety, you don't breathe comfortably. So there is an interesting thing to martial arts that's way different than just running or swimming or biking, which are the 3 best ways to improve your cardiorespiratory endurance. And I support anybody that's doing those, do those. I run. I could probably bicycle, but I run. It's being in the military for so many years. Then we kind of look at, okay, so what about wrestlers? Man, these guys, they wrestle, they've got to have some super good endurance. They do. And they last way longer than the football players and the baseball players or the track people when it comes to wrestling or grappling. They last longer. They don't last very long kickboxing. They've got the endurance for wrestling, but they can't move quickly and have the endurance to last long. They run out of gas. They run out of steam. Their footwork also stinks. And the reason why is because they're used to making a quick penetration, a quick grab, and then they wrestle. Right? There's no running around. There's no dodging, ducking. There's none of that in wrestling. They bring something else to the table that's really great. And I love wrestling. My kids are on the wrestling team, and I help train the wrestlers from the local high schools. But it is still different. Putting a wrestler in a kickboxing scenario, their endurance isn't the same. By the way, putting a kickboxer in front of a wrestler and saying, look, you just have to wrestle. They can't punch, they can't kick. We've hamstrung that guy. Not only is their technique not going to be good enough to win, the wrestler's going to dominate almost every single time. But then they're going to get tired because they're not used to the same kind of endurance. The resistance training is why we do jiu-jitsu. I'm telling you, if you grab hold of somebody by their uniform, it is difficult for them to break free. Most people agree to grab. And there are some wrist escapes. There's some lapel escapes that we can do. But for the most part, once somebody grabs you, you now try not to resist too much or you get tired. The grip strength of a wrestler is pretty good, but they don't a lot of times close their hand around something small like clothing. They leave their hand open around a wrist. They leave their hand open around the back of the neck for the lock. They scoop this way for the legs. So they don't have the same grip strength the guy that's holding on for dear life to a uniform has. We wrap our hands around clothing and we hold on. It's very difficult to break that grip. So it is a little different even when we look at that. So I love jiu-jitsu for that piece, the strength training. It's a resistance training. I push, I pull. In some cases, I'm on top of people using my weight, and I'm in many ways smothering them. And they are literally trying to bench press me off, and they get tired quickly. I just let them. I relax. I don't try to fight them. I let them lift me. If they want to lift me, I just reposition because I've got the dominant position. I got the top. So we've talked about cardiovascular fitness, muscular strength and endurance, and then the actual, the strength training or the resistance training piece. And I think when you're looking at kickboxing and jiu-jitsu, those are the 2 best functions for fitness. It's incredible. So what does that really, by the way, also, we didn't really talk a lot about flexibility, but you have to be flexible, neck flexibility for wrestling, for jiu-jitsu, for judo, for sambo. And then, of course, hamstring and groin flexibility for kickboxing, karate, kempo, taekwondo. Those things are extremely important. We get that in martial arts. You don't get a whole lot of that outside. The football team does a little flexibility, and the runners, they warm up their quads and they stretch their calves a little bit, but Stretching the groin muscle is completely different than any other thing that we do. You don't need it for, you don't need it for running or for biking or for swimming. You don't need groin flexibility for that, okay? Maybe ballet, maybe dance. They are stretching that a little bit more. Definitely ballet. They're doing like full splits and stuff. Gymnastics, that's the one. They're doing a lot of flexibility stuff. Okay, that is kind of the big picture of what I'm trying to teach. And why I'm trying to teach it again is what? Self-defense. It's not preserving a tradition like the traditional system, so I'm a little bit different. I focus more on the application. I focus less on the tradition. I'm able to capture a little bit more time. Thus, it takes, a good karate guy might take 5, even 10 years to make instructor quality. He can probably make good fight quality at 5 years. I mean, you're really good at 5 years. As a karate, taekwondo, or Kempo guy, 5 years, you're pretty stinking good. Most people are black belt in 5 years. Kickboxing, whoosh, I can get somebody there pretty much in about 3 years. How do I do that? Not that they're ready to necessarily teach, but they're pretty stinking good because I'm using the time more wisely for application. So it's it's a simpler art. Not a lot of memorization work. We're not memorizing a 54 move kata that we have to memorize in order to get a test and so forth. It's a different application. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they are intentionally sandbagging. It might take you 10 years to get a black belt in traditional Jiu-Jitsu. I'm not against that. If that's their system and they want to make sure that only the best of the best of the best get a black belt, then all you got to do is look, well, how long does it take to get a blue belt? It takes about 5 years. The reason it only takes 5 years is because they got to have blue belt in order to teach. I don't let anybody teach until they make black belt. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they don't really let you teach until you're blue belt, blue, purple, brown, black, right? So really, what are we saying? They're sandbagging. By the time you're a black belt, I've already promoted a lot of my guys long before that because they have the capability. I don't think I need 10 years. Some people are slower. It might take them 8, maybe even 10 years. But generally speaking, by the time you're in the 6 to 8 year window, you should be ready to teach. I'm not going to be on the same belt ranking system that the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys do. By the way, they do a white belt, then they do a stripe, then they do another stripe, right? Then they do a blue belt. I do a white belt, a yellow belt, an orange belt, and a blue belt. There's still 4 ranks in between. They just have a different belt ranking system. I'm not against that. I've trained with the Gracies. I've trained with the Machados. I've trained with a lot of great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys. Bottom line is I don't necessarily agree that you got to wait 10 years to get a black belt. I want an instructor in about 5 years to 6 years. And by the way, that's what they want. At blue belt, they got instructors at blue belt level. They're running a school, a legit school. They just don't have a black belt. So it's 6 in one, half dozen in the other. I know I felt like I was kind of going off into a little tangent there, a rabbit hole. But the point of the matter is that after about 5 years, somebody should be pretty much ready to teach in Jiu-Jitsu. Again, kickboxing, you're really, really good fighter at 3 years. Probably need about 5 years to be a good instructor. Filipino stick and knife training doesn't have a belt rank system, so to speak. There's ways that you certify block by block by block, whether you're teaching, a Sinwali or a Sembrata or a Corto system or pieces, you got to be able to do double stick, single stick, knife, then maybe stick and knife, then maybe stick and sword, and so on and so forth. And you can blossom from there. And then you can go into joint locks and traps and things of that nature, which I really do enjoy. But it's very different. My students have been with me. I started this program about 3 years ago, the Filipino martial arts program, and they are of excellent quality and they can do the material, and I think they can defend themselves with a stick and a knife, which is pretty good. They're not ready to teach at the 3-year mark. All right. I would love for you guys to do 2 things for me at this point. Number 1, again, if you enjoy the video, subscribe. I need subscribers. If you like me and you like what I'm saying, by the way, you don't have to watch the video most of the time. If I'm here talking, just listen. You can just put it on your car while you're driving. You don't have to watch. I've got instructional videos, rifle, pistol, shotgun, Stick and Knife. I've also got Kickboxing channel and a separate Jiu-Jitsu channel. So you can watch those when you're not driving and so forth. But if you're interested in the background, the philosophy, the strategy that I have, how do I teach, why do I teach, who do I teach, then I'm in this forum. You can tell I'm in my office. I'm not in my uniform. And I'm just kind of explaining things that oftentimes people want to remark online. They want to ask me about. All that being said, be sure to subscribe. Hit the little bell so you get my notifications. Second thing that I'd really like for you guys to do is leave me a comment. Now, there is a ton of trolling going out there. Half the comments I get are trolls. I mean, these people are, oh, that sucks. They didn't say what sucks. They didn't say what they liked and what they didn't like. I sometimes have to, do some typing, get it out of them. What is it? What sucked? What didn't you like? Sometimes they're like, you're wearing a watch. How could you wear a watch? I just got through telling you, I'm not a traditional instructor. I wear a Fitbit. I like to track my steps, my heart rate. Fitness is important. I'm certified with the National Strength and Conditioning Association. So, as a personal trainer, I like to track that stuff. So people dog me about my watch. That's fine. Dog me. Again, I'm not a traditional judo or jiu-jitsu practitioner at this stage. I'm a mixed martial artist. I wear wrestling shoes on the mat for obvious reasons. So again, I get lots of trolls. Oh, why are you wearing shoes on the mat? Oh, not shoes on the mat. Well, the bottom line is, in self-defense, you don't have time to take off your shoes in most cases. Even if I had time to take off my shoes in a self-defense scenario, I wouldn't. The shoes protect the feet. The feet can easily get injured. You could step on a piece of glass on the street, for example. You could kick somebody. I've done it where you kick somebody and you hang that toe up in their uniform, and then you got to stick that toe back and tape it, right? And it was that busted a toe. You know what I'm talking about. Doesn't happen with shoes on. Does it make kicking a little bit more hazardous? No. I've never knocked somebody out kicking them with a wrestling shoe that I wouldn't have also knocked them out barefoot. So it doesn't give me, oh, he's got an advantage. He's wearing a shoe. You know what? You wear shoes too. And, we'll spar, we'll put on the gear, and it'll be fine. It's not the same as a cowboy boot or a steel-toed boot. Those would give you an advantage, obviously. But again, I wear shoes. I wear a watch. By the way, some people dog me about my uniform. That's fine. My students were kind enough, generous enough to buy a uniform for me. They found this uniform. It was all black. It's a Hayabusa, which is a high-quality jiu-jitsu uniform, and it had the Punisher emblem on the back. Tell me, again, it looks flashy-dashy, but tell me, if you're an instructor and your students bought a uniform for you and it gave you the feeling that they felt you were the Punisher, a Marvel hero, you're a comic book hero, tell me you wouldn't wear that uniform. I wear it with pride. I love it. I don't injure people. I'm not punishing them, but I'm really grateful that they bought me this uniform. I would not have spent the money on a $200 Hayabusa or $175 Hayabusa uniform for myself. I probably would not have done that. But since they did it for me, guess what? I bought one of my junior instructors a Captain America Hayabusa uniform. It's a little flashy, but I don't let this beginner students wear those. They wear the plain blue. Generally speaking, it's a judo style uniform. They're inexpensive, affordable, and they are durable. So for the most part, you'll see us wearing blue uniforms that look more judo-like rather than jiu-jitsu-y. By the way, I like the bigger cuff, right? I don't like the form-fitting sleeve that jiu-jitsu has. So you'll see people that are dogging me about those things. I don't care, and here's why. The algorithm just doesn't really care if you are a troll or if you're a fan. All that cares about is the comment. So leave me a comment. Hopefully you leave me a kind comment, a comment that you like, something about, I like the way you kick. I like the way that you're striking. I like how you teach. I like when I see you spar, a lot of people are like, Curtis, you're not beating the snot out of your students. I let them hit me a lot, and I have a good time with them. I hit them a lot. By the way, why do I let them hit me a lot? I'm tough. I can take it. They can't hurt me. It's difficult to hurt me. Don't get me wrong. If I went in there and I fought John Jones tomorrow, he could hurt me. There'd be no doubt, right? If I fought Mike Tyson, he could hurt me. There's no doubt. He's a heavyweight. But for the most part, people are my size or smaller, and even though they kick fast and I teach them right, I'm used to taking heavy-duty punishment. It's not the end of the world. I let them hit me. And I like it when they hit me, and I want them to gain confidence from hitting me. But I hit them back. I just don't punish them in a way that would be out of bounds. So leave me a comment if you like how we fight. I'd love for you to leave me a comment, a request. Hey, I'd like to see more of this training, right? You want to see more elbows and knees? I love the Muay Thai system. I teach out of it. You're going to see me throw 4 basic elbows. You're going to see me basically throw 4 different styles of knees. You're going to see, a little bit of flashy dashy spinning elbow work, spinning back fist work. I can do those things as well. I enjoy fighting with those and teaching those. But it's basic. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut, front kick, side kick, back kick, round kick. Pretty simple. Static defense, right? Clinch, and then ultimately, lots of footwork and angling. What else? Leave a comment. That's the last thing. That's the second thing. Guys, again, my name is Curtis Robinson. I am the owner of Conway Toe to Toe and Toe to Toe Firearms and Training. We're located at 807 Bill Dean Drive here in Conway, Arkansas. Kind of hard to miss us. We got a big sign. We've got lots of other indications of what we do here on the building. There's a firearms banner. There's, a kickboxing, jiu-jitsu banner and so forth. So come find us. Come check us out. Come spend some time with us. By the way, I'm willing to travel, right? If you guys have a school reasonably nearby, I'll be glad to drop in. If you're far away, if you'll help me with some travel expenses, I'm happy to come in and work with you guys as well. I love to travel and I love to spread the knowledge. Guys, take care. Be cool. Train hard. Don't give up. I was a new guy just like you. That was 40 years ago. Yeah, I'm an old guy now. Take care. Peace.